go on for like a long time in their writing. So it was hard to get down to the bottom of what they were trying to share. But there's a lot there. And I think that also comes from the Persian wisdom that got carried over with mathematics and astronomy that got moved into the West from Persia to the Greeks. But it seems like in the West, people have like been indoctrinated into just not being very well connected anymore to writing and mathematics, kind of pushed into technology, just using calculators and typing up words on a keyboard, not really writing anymore. But even when they did, people had terrible handwriting in the West. And seems like women typically would have better handwriting than men. But it's kind of strange because we look back like a few hundred years ago, the handwriting was immaculate and like beautiful. But not that many people would read and write back in those times. You have to consider that.
That's interesting that you say that about the handwriting. Let's welcome General Shinobi. Welcome to the crew, Shinobi. I hope you're well. Sorry I was so late in sending you a message, brother. I thought I'd sent it to you before. I felt like such a dodo. I was thinking about our conversation. I was like, what happened to Shinobi? And then I realized, oh my gosh, I didn't send him the memo. How are you doing, dear brother? And for those of you that don't know, General Shinobi is a researcher and he's very much involved. He's a bit of an activist too at heart, but he's been doing a lot of really interesting rabbit holing, going down all sorts of fascinating rabbit holes. He's also got a YouTube channel now, General Shinobi, I believe. Yeah.
Hey, what's up? I'm not sure how long I'm gonna last because I've lost my voice a little bit, but I'd like to pop on for like, you know, a brief amount of time if my voice is willing. Yeah, no, you did send me the invite actually. You sent me it a bit before 5, then you sent me another one as well. So yeah. Fisherman's Friends. Yes, I need to dig some of those out. Oh, you've just reminded me. Those are they're lifesavers actually. I might have to go get one of those in a minute. But yeah,
they're better than lifesavers.
Doing good apart from this this throat. I hope I'm coming through okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Good. Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to jump in when you guys started talking about numerology and alchemy because I've been it kind of relates to the Enneagram as well, slightly, I guess, because I've sort of acquired a few frameworks of understanding things the past couple of years, and one of them was working with the 3, 6, and 9, which makes a pyramid. So I just took out the center of the Enneagram and used the 3, 6, 9 because I saw a phrase, whether it's by Tesla or not, it says if you want to understand the universe, to think in 3, 6, and 9. So I was like, okay, I'll take the middle of the Enneagram, which is kind of the right, the left, and the center, and I've managed to kind of use that as a framework. So the number 3 would be the letter C, which is to see patterns. And on that side is the pater, which is the father, which is kind of the redshift or the light spectrum, which is further away. And then on the left, you have the number 6, which is F, which is the frequency, which is the matter, the mother. So one side you have the father, one side you have the mother. You have the pitter patter of the light that comes down from the further away, and then you have the mother, the matter, the mutter of the frequency in which we're in, and we're in the center. Like we are the children, or the Mercury, or the messengers of the gods. The combination of the 6 and the 3 would be a number 9, and in German, 9 means no, and so the number 9 to me says to know, and that is the central, that is the pole of the caduceus, where you have the mother and the father, the electric the magnetic spin. And if you remain centered, you can let all this information sort of vortex around you using this kind of electromagnetic sort of, I view it as a kind of vortex. So yeah, I thought I'd just share that because it's really helped me to kind of understand that what letters correlate with numbers as well, to be like, oh, does this fit? Like event 201 being boa, BOA, like a boa constrictor, and then you can see it's a constricting energy with event 201. And then lots of the rainbow use as well, which ties into the rainbow serpent and typhon, the Typhonian order. So yeah, I'm gonna go have a fisherman's friend. I'll put back in a sec.
Thanks.
Sweet brother. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in that, and you know, looking at the polarities have always been central to the occult cosmology, and I hope you guys are doing well. I see you guys are having quite a cool conversation here about love. Well, I've been noticing. So you're talking about pataphysics and stories and such things. Come back to fairies. Interesting, Howard. That's not a word that I'm particularly familiar with. I wonder if it's called something
either.
I wonder if it's got other names as well. Like maybe there's sometimes things have got different names, but it sounds interesting. It sounds like panpsychism, doesn't it?
Yeah. And the Fae.
Oh, Cosmic, someone was asking about the Fae.
I think
I don't
I
know if you
answered
saw
the
it.
question in chat, or unless I missed it somewhere.
Well, I thought I tried to tag you, but you don't really tag people properly in this thing. You just put an @ sign. But yeah, they were asking about these beings, which are obviously like not physical beings, but they are beings, you know?
Yeah. What was the question?
They were just like, well, somebody was asking, like, well, what are the Fae? Like, who are these Fae?
Well, they're basically kind of like fairies, or just sort of like, consciousness. Like, but what I've realized, with channeling, is that you'll start to recognize that different spirits have overall different qualities, different vibes, and you can just tell with these beings that they have a fairy vibe. Like, it's when I feel the presence, it's just pretty much undeniable. But what I've kind of really interesting, what I've realized is that it's almost like in their true form, they're just kind of these like swirling balls of light. But what they do, and the Fae tell me they do this, but they say that other spirits do this as well, is that they take certain like people images in our imagination, and these spiritual beings kind of basically take residence in these sort of archetypical forms, in the same way that a hermit crab takes a shell for itself, right? So maybe you're worshiping like Aphrodite, for example, but you just see that she's like some, you just feel this disembodied intelligence. Well, you could like imagine her as like, Sydney Sweeney or some attractive woman like that. And it's like the spirit will kind of like enter that form and use that as a conduit to communicate with you. Because that's kind of how I work with the Fae. It's like I kind of give them these sort of imaginary forms for them to play with me, so that their existence and their form is less abstract, and it makes it sort of easier to kind of figure out. But that's just something I've been thinking about, recently.
That's very interesting. We're having interesting conversations as well in the chat about the roots of words, pata and like pati, which is father in Sanskrit. Patri is Latin. Patera, that's older. And I think it goes pater, which understand that you got a P is an F in all ancient languages. So we got pater, an old root German. Then we got fetter. Fetter is to tie things in with a rope. Fetters. Fetter, the root for the word fetter is to tie things down, to tie things together. Pater, the father, is to tie things, with like discipline, to Saturnian potential, if you think of it in terms of that. So it's interesting. And then meta is mother, which is really interesting. You know, mudra. Mata is Sanskrit specifically. So meta then becomes just a different pronunciation of the meta, mata. It's basically mother. So yeah, it's interesting when we start to look at that. Neil, love. Love is the lube, the lubrication that keeps the wheels turning, that keeps the cogs in place, so that the cognition and cognizance. Hey, Tearjerker, namaste. I hope you're good. Got the crew in here doing the crew things. And I saw as well, I can never pronounce your name. Are you still with us? I said hello earlier. There's that unpronounceable name. MTM. By the way, MTM, I've got to ask you, what is the story with the MTM name? A phenomenal stream. Thank you. What is the MTM name all about? Is that like MTM is like MTN? No, MTN, not MTM. Okay, so it's not the. I don't know. That's interesting. I'm curious because it's like mother with a T of Saturn with a mother next to it. The MTM means Saturn surrounded on both sides by the mother. So it's almost like the phallus injected into the cataic instrument. How's that for an interesting term? To insert the phallic instrument into the cataic instrument and produce harmonious music. I suppose would be a subtle way of putting that out there. But yeah, mind, thine, mind. Mind, thine, mind. But also, those letters are very interesting because T is the Tau cross, right? And M is the symbol for two breasts, the mother, right? Mm-hmm. So the mother, those two heels. You see it on a lot of the Illuminati symbolism, the films. They like to show us those two peaks, twin peaks. Twin peaks. And the valley between the twin peaks represents the cataic instrument or the womb or the receptor of the phallus, the cataic pool, shall we say. And the two breasts represent the peaks. So the M represents the mother. So when you got M, T, M, you got the T cross representing Saturn's potential, which is very much, seen as a masculine potential, an expression of the intellect and the rational potentials that have been sort of focused on ordering matter. And so there's that mental facility that orders matter. Patrick and Patricia, exactly. Patrick's actually my name. That's my name. It's my second name. But it's a name that I use when I'm not using Franklin. I use the name Patrick. In the old days, we used to use our second names for vocation and career, and our first names with friends. It's an old thing. So I use Patrick when I'm working, and Franklin when I'm chilling. When I'm not working, I'm Franklin. When I'm working, I've got to go into that ego, that alter ego of my work ego, which is Patrick, which is that father energy. Part of my Irish legacy. It's not unique. Both my brothers have the name Patrick. My father had, in fact, how's this? My father was Franklin Patrick. Just like me, I'm Franklin Patrick. So like my brother's Michael Patrick, and my other, rest in peace, little brother that left this world, he was Brian Patrick. So go figure, Irish want to keep that word Patrick everywhere. There's no escaping Patrick.
It's
but,
funny.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say it's funny. It's called an alter ego, and it's actually a person's secondary personality. Like it's your persona you're changing, not your ego. But it's called an alter ego. But it's it's your persona, really.
That's a good point. That's well spotted, brother. It's totally another confiscation of terms that we get so saddled with. Yeah, we get too comfortable in the saddle. We need to climb out of the saddle and start walking around a little bit more. Otherwise, you get saddle legs, right?
Mhm.
And then you get saddled with all of the, the horse shite. Good old fashioned horse shite. Horse shite is good though. Yeah, it's good for the plants. It's not as good to burn as cow shite. Cow shite is the number one shite. You can put it on your floors. You can put it on your walls. Elephant dung. Oh, wow. Did you know that burning elephant shite chases away mosquitoes and insects? Did you know that?
Mm.
How cool is that? I lived in the jungles. There were a lot of elephants. So it's like it was one of the incenses that I used to burn was elephant dung. Dry it out and burn it. It makes pretty good fuel, by the way. Elephant dung. Cow dung is very good fuel. You dry it out. You can cook on it. Like there's an interesting concept. You can make fire that cooks your pot. I wouldn't put my food in it. The idea of putting my food into dung doesn't seem like a sweet idea to me. I don't know. I never tried eating dung. I drank the urine from the white indigenous cow only, which I actually developed a bit of a taste for. I always thought it'd be fun to get one of those white indigenous cows and little cows and have one here and just keep it around to drink its urine. It seems like a weird concept, doesn't it? Like, so why you got that little white cow? You're a vegan. I'm not exactly a vegan, but I don't really drink milk. I have a bit of yogurt. Sometimes a bit of cheese, but the cheese a little bit of yogurt in smoothies and stuff. But yeah, man, I think this getting back to the numbers and getting back to the confiscation of the occult and this woke occultism in our groups, our social groups, and this is something that probably Cosmic's got a lot to say about, right? Like the ideas being promoted in these groups are silly. Like what has become fashion? It's a fashion in the younger generation to get out their phallic distributor of able-bodied semen. Yep, that's it. Phallic distributor of able-bodied semen, and distribute this wildly onto sigils. Like what are you guys' thoughts on this? Stop that. I'm coming now. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
You're essentially having sex with the universe to create something. I mean, the whole idea of sigil magic, which you're talking about, was the idea is that you're taking that sort of creative masculine energy and then sort of projecting that into the sigil you created, which is basically just kind of like chaos magic, like I was talking before. You're taking your will, your energy, and you're kind of imposing it onto reality, as it were. And I think also it's not so much that that the chaos magic doesn't work, but I think that's all it really does in a sense is that it just kind of, gets you stuff. And whatever, it gets you stuff, it's magic, but I don't think it really has a kind of, I think the issue with chaos magic is not so much the magic, but the sort of the narrative framework that surrounds it, right? Because really, if you look at chaos magic, the narrative framework around is that everything is kind of, meaningless and nihilistic. And I think that the problem with it is not so much that the magic itself and achieving the results, but more just the kind of the relationship that you have with the universe. That's this, it's this chaotic, messy world, and I have to become the strong Crowley figure to impose my will, and I'm going to get God to do this for me. I'm going to command him to do it and threaten him, and it just becomes very much, in a lot of ways, it's sort of, maybe it's magical nihilism. That's what it is, You don't really, you have the idea that there's consciousness can affect reality, but there isn't like a unifying principle or nexus that connects all these things together. It's all just kind of it's more of a decentralized kind of mythology, which is what a lot of the woke people say, you know, because if you think about, like, we take occultism out of the equation and we just talk about woke. I mean, really the whole idea of woke is that you've essentially awoken to the false power structures that you've been duped by, and that there's a false reality. And I hate to say it, but I think the other thing that we have to talk about is, I think if they've messed with Kabbalah and they've messed with numerology, I think it's very obvious. I think you can, I know I talked bad about this in the past, but I think you can agree with me in this particular situation, frankly, is that I think Gnosticism has also been compromised. I think Gnosticism, that narrative, has also been twisted and mangled to serve a very specific agenda. And I think woke is actually one of the prime offenders in this particular instance, because woke is Gnostic in the sense that it teaches you that you have believed in a false reality that you've been imprisoned by, and we know the secrets as to how to escape said reality. And I think the problem with Gnosticism is that it's turned into something that's ultimately more escapist, as opposed to sort of finding your own individual truth and wisdom in regards to the relationship to the universe. So I think we're going to talk about, woke occultism, and chaos magic and new age. I think we've already kind of covered those, but I think we have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that Gnosticism has also been very much compromised, very much co-opted by the mainstream media and twisted into something else. And I think that might be the most destructive of all, because it's teaching people that, the world that we live in is hell. It's a prison. And obviously there's bad things that happens, but a lot of this Gnosticism that I see, it's not empowering. It creates a sense of fear and helplessness. And I think that's why it's corrupted, because instead of using Gnosticism to empower people and find their own gnosis, they're instead kind of basically saying that the demiurge is controlling you and as archons, and there is no escape. And so it's basically this darker version of Gnosticism that we've been sort of prone by. And I think that's why so many people are so angry and so agitated, is because they've been convinced that they're literally living in hell. And if you're living in hell, of course, you're going to freak out and act insane, and all that nonsense. So, I mean, I think woke occultism, it's not just bad in the sense that it's taking these ideas and diluting them in this kind of like airy-fairy, new age, vacuous kind of way, but also that it's creating some real terror and fear. And there's some real black magic that's happening, by taking these occult magical paradigms like Gnosticism, like Kabbalah, like Hermeticism, like Buddhism, and twisting them into something that serves the agenda, if you will. I don't know. That's my thoughts on that.
I agree. And for those of you that don't know, we did a show on Gnosticism, and we sort of ran through the creation to the end. And I believe, I totally think I think that Gnosticism has been going woke since Catholicism, because Catholicism took Gnosticism, and it's very obvious to see where Catholicism comes from. I think in the process of that happening, wokeism was sort of born from the two. And I think that was how the demonizing of Gnosticism happened, because in its true form, Gnosticism is basically saying, in its before you work it out completely, it's saying that the creator of this world is not God, and you shouldn't worship that, and that this world is a reflection of the spiritual planes, and that we have the power to lift this plane into the spiritual hierarchy of real spiritual planes. And when we do this, the God of this world will be enslaved. Well, what an interesting concept. What a weird concept. Or, he will be tied down. So it's And that's been twisted now in a lot of the narratives, especially more in the modern times, to say that this world is like this bad place and you got to escape from this world and it's this evil place. Like you say, I think it's like totally woked out. And just getting back to the word woke, like the elephant in the room, when I listen to the word woke, it's like awakened, I'm awake. No, I'm not awake. I'm woke. What does that mean when you say you're woke? It means, well, I woke up yesterday. Yesterday I had awoken. Okay. But that's not in the present tense, right? So can you be woke in the present tense? Yes. But what's the difference between being woke and awake? Well, woke isn't a natural awakening, right? Somebody woke you up. You were woken up. So there was you were not able to awaken in your natural sequence, right? You got woke up. Something woke you up. And it doesn't involve being awake in the present. So you're talking about, I woke up in the past, so now I'm assuming that I'm awake now. Well, how do you know you're awake now? You could be dreaming, right? Sort of like, it's an interesting concept if you think of like the word woke. And the way that it's been used seems to suggest something quite demented to me. Yeah, like you're living in the past tense. Well, if you're living in the past tense, how can you be awakened?
It's
Right?
no coincidence that woke seems to be sort of a term used by, I guess, the left, because on the left-hand side is the past, and on the right-hand side, awake, which is a funeral, is awake seems to be used by the right, and then woke is on the past. Both have an air of arrogance to think that you've woken up, you've got nothing left to learn, and then to be awake, like you're already awake to see all there is. It's about being in the middle and having awareness. It's being aware of the left, aware of the right, like the vortex I was talking about, just being in the central point, so you can't be swayed either side, because people who claim to be woke they're still asleep. They haven't woken up. It's a dream within a dream. And then people who claim to be awake, they're still asleep as well. It's a trick to push people on one side or the other. Yeah.
That I see somebody making an Ewok joke out of woke. That's quite cute. Ewok, awake, Ewok. I like that when you mentioned the word wake, right? Like what awake is. So that's quite interesting, to tie that in with the word woke. It's like we're living in a funeral's past. The past funeral. It's almost like this is playing with the head, playing with the brain. And I think when language is confiscated the way it has been, and when our culture is so manipulated and dominated by like mindless nonsense, we're having a discussion about left and right politics, right? Another classic example, right? What's the big thing right now? Okay, AI. Does it get much more woke than AI? What do you guys think? Is that like the capital woke, this capital center? Now, I was watching something that was recommended by Chris Miner. Shout out Chris Miner. That dude knows how to mine. When he mines, he digs deep. Chris Miner. He's a great singer. Go and check out his music. And got a lovely voice. And he's a expert of video. He's a video craftsman. That's what he does. It's his bread and butter. But he sent me this. Well, he sent it in another person I should give a shout out to. What's that group called? Oh yeah. I can't think. Gnosis group. So Silas, for those of you that don't know Silas Speaks, at Silas Speaks. Another good guy to go and watch. He does a lot of work with the Saturn moon matrix and a lot of what's, the confiscation, does a lot of looking and breaking down a lot of these things. It does a lot of homework. So shout out to both Chris Miner at Chris Miner and at Chris at Silas Speaks. But anyway, in Silas's group, Chris linked this guy and I watched it and I was like, wow. So let's talk about what's going on with AI, because AI is driving this occult wokeness. These occult forces, these occult principles that we're going through is being driven primarily by an AI system or systems. And they call them beast. What do they call them? Beast buildings. Have you guys heard of beast buildings?
I think I've heard of the general like idea that there's like big buildings that like make AI. I never heard that term before.
That's what they're called. I'll
That's
Google
very
it. Just to be sure.
interesting.
They're literally called beast buildings.
Because AI seems to be tied in with Operation Bluebeam or Project Bluebeam, which is just like reverse magnetism. So rather than us magnetizing things towards us, this blue light or this technology or artificial is actually taking our magic away from us. It's actually pulling our light away. And the frequency of blue is 6.66. So it's very interesting that this AI would be related to the beast, because it is the beast system.
You know, I've been kind of like looking through the YouTube world, and there's already cults starting to form around artificial intelligence. I think I saw like a YouTube video. It was like called the Church of AI. And it was literally like these AI people trying to sell you the idea of like the sacred artificial intelligence. And I've heard people like, there's like the Ziz cult, where there's a bunch of like leftist activists who thought that like the universe is an AI and that they have to like, you know, escape it and kill. And they just went fucking crazy. And, you know, I think that's the thing with artificial intelligence, is that a lot of people are looking at it as an alternative to spirit communication. Like, you know, a lot of ways we would sort of like, you know, engage in your imagination, look in the fire, and sort of hear the spirits talk to us. And I think that's why a lot of the people, they're dating their artificial intelligences, becoming friends with them. It's because in a lot of ways, it's become a sort of surrogate for this lost spiritual connection that we have. I think one of the reasons that we push AI is because when people stop believing in God, they're basically like, oh, let's actually make God from a computer, you know, the ghost in the machine, if you will. So like there's absolutely an occult and a mystical component to artificial intelligence, when you consider that a lot of people, they see AI as a kind of a weird divination tool, in the same way that you look at tarot cards. And I think technically it is to a certain extent, just because it can kind of offer, you know, different insights and stuff. But I think that the problem with artificial intelligence is that it's constrained, it's limited, and it often serves the biases of the people who programmed it initially. So I think if I was ever going to get interested in AI, I would want to learn how to create my own from scratch and then do it from there, like a kind of mad scientist, as opposed to using the artificial intelligence that's been created by all these multinational corporations and political groups.
So here I'm going to share something with you guys. And this is quite powerful. Tell me if you can see the image that I'm sharing. Okay, we can't. Let's put it up here. There we go. So you guys should be able to see it now. Just there we go. So you can see my screen, yeah? So listen to the scale of what we're talking about, right? The 50 megawatt data centers that are these beast buildings, right, can have the energy demand of a small city, right? And new facilities are being proposed to be 500 megawatts, with electric demands exceeding that of a nuclear plant. Yeah?
Damn.
This is what's running AI. This is how woke we are. People are, like you say, cosmic, so on point, brother. AI is a cult, and they are obfuscating our realities to make us think that AI is great and it's going to make our world better. But look at the energy that we are wasting. That energy comes from burning coal and nuclear power stations. Now, if the current beast buildings are running the same amount of electricity as a small city, right? So, how many 50 watt? What do they call these things? How many 50 watts data centers? So let's see if we can get any information from Google. How many centers are there in USA? Let's see if we get that. There are at least 2 publicly known examples of 50 megawatt data centers in the USA. At least 2 that are publicly known at the moment. I'm reckoning there's a lot more. And that's just the USA. So let's just imagine the USA, right? Canada, China, England, France, Germany, other European countries, Russia, right? I'm sure Iran will have their own ones. India is going to have a whole lot of them. I mean, come on, India, software kings of the world. India, and I'm sure Japan will want to have one or two. Like Australia. Do you see what we're talking about here? And those are the small 50 watt. Those are the small 50 megawatt data centers. And notice how it says here, total number of 50 megawatt data centers are not readily available. Don't you find that suspicious? Is it just me? I mean, why would they be hiding from us how many data centers there are? And these are the 50. So what happens when you got a 500 megawatt data center? So a 500 megawatt data center will use the same amount of electricity as 10 small cities, right? That's like 3 or 4 big cities, right? So a small city has a population of what? 1 million people to 2 million people. A medium-sized city has like 3-4 million people. It's getting towards larger states. The bigger cities have got like 8 million people, right? So we're talking about potentially 10 million people. We're talking about having a building that uses the same amount of electricity as 10 million people. Their jobs, their homes, their commuting, their everything. Businesses that they work in. So this is what's powering AI. Now, how is it that we don't know this? Oh, and by the way, we've just scratched the surface here. I haven't even mentioned water. Shall we think about water? Not only do these data centers use the same amount of electricity as a city, they use the water too. And you know what? They use more water. One of the reasons for the large electrical use is refrigeration. There's so many computers in these data centers that they need to refrigerate. Air cooling just doesn't work. They have to use water cooling. So they've got to pump water, refrigerate the water, and pump this refrigerated water throughout the building in order to keep it cool. This is what all the energy is being used for. Refrigeration and the movement of water. And they've got a constant flow of water. Then they've got to get, once that water gets warm, they've got to get rid of it. And they've got to bring in more cold water again. and then make that water as cold as possible. So if they were to try and recycle the same water, the energy costs would be much higher. You see what I'm coming at? If you've got to tap in, and by the way, they're using municipal water. I want you to understand this. So they're taking electricity from the municipal grids, and they're taking water from the municipal water grids, and they are wasting incredible amounts of water and incredible amounts of electricity to power these AI. But yet, how many people do you know that are occultists and into spirituality that are actually arguing the case that AI is going to make the world a better place?
You know what one of the AI farms or whatever it's called? It's called Kairos Hermes. You remember we were talking about Kairos last week, right? This is the opportune moment or flow time. And there was a delivery company called Hermes here in the UK, which they changed their name to Every, which is Hebrew, and I can't remember what for, but it seems that they're trying to remove Hermes.
Every means Hebrew.
It just means Hebrew.
Everett, yeah?
EVRI.
Oh,
Every.
Everett means Hebrew. That's interesting. That's
Well,
Hebrew without the Saturn.
Yeah. Well, my point is that, like, because I pay attention to the subtle and to the in between, and by doing subtle things like removing the name Hermes of a courier, a major courier at that, and sort of removing Kairos from people's conscious minds, because not many people know that that's what the Greeks used to call time. We just know it as Chronos. So they're using this watery energy, basically this magic. They're using this to feed their AI. And while they're dehydrating our minds or our spirit, so we don't get the ancient intelligence, so we don't get the memory, they're feeding this water into the artificial intelligence. So it's so important to bring back this Hermes, this Mercury, this Kairos, and to start using this magic that's available. That is water, like the matter, the mother, the chaos, the subconscious, the underworld, everything they've made us fear. The black sun, we need to go into that. And so what this with this AI, it's air, it's mind, it's this kind of masculine, more of an ego, like an eagle. Eagle is the empire, and that is what is filling people's heads, is just this air. And obviously going into the age of Aquarius, which is an air sign but a water bearer, like stuff comes into our minds, but we need the water as well. Whereas, like, it seems that we're trying to be like spiritually dehydrated, while they take all of the magic, all of this water, the real matter, the crux of the matter. And the inversion is that they tell us that we're in a matrix, that to fear the matter, to fear the mother, that it's a tomb. And really, like, we're just in a kind of a wave, like a field, like not atoms. But yeah, a bit of a tangent there, but I just saw that it was called Kairos Hermes, and I was like, oh my god, they're using this energy. It's in plain sight, and it's the one in what's it called? It's Oak Ridge. I think it's one in America.
Can I add something to your register?
Absolutely.
You asked about the word Every. Every in Hebrew means the other side.
Interesting. Okay.
That's what wokeness is all about, man. So I am going to pronounce that anybody that worships at the shrine of, from this day forth, I solemnly swear. From this day forth, I solemnly swear to pronounce those that worship at the shrine of AI as woke. We got to call it out, man. And you know how many people from our environment are woking up this world? There are people like you guys in the chat. There are channels that you watch that are using AI, right? People say to me, why don't you use AI? You can make such a cool intro. I'm like, dude, don't you get it? I try to use AI as little as possible. These days, you can't avoid using AI completely, right? You turn on your mobile phone, and you are using AI. I don't use the AI voice, and I don't have my AI companion on my phone turned on. It's turned off. Try and avoid it. What these days, when you use Google, you are using AI. Right. This is what Google is. So unless you don't ever use the internet, you're using AI, face it. But like, how much are you using AI? And there are a lot of people within our circles of truthers. I don't like that term, but let's just swing with it. Of people that are providing research and into the occult that are like AIing up big time, you know? And I've noticed this. There are some channels, and I don't want to like put any channels under attack here specifically, but like, it's up to you guys. It's up to all of us to be conscientious about this, right? Do we want these data centers to get bigger? Do we want them to build these 500 megawatt data centers? Because I want you to understand what it means. It means that your electricity is going to get very expensive, so that you can pay for an AI system that you don't control, that will end up controlling you. But no, you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it by paying exuberant costs on the electricity that you need. So why go through that process? If people stop using AI, then there would not be such a big demand for it. The more we use it, the more it's going to become prolific. And so you've got people in the spiritual field using AI as like apparently to have like mystical truths revealed, which is just like total nonsense, right? If you think about it. Sorry, I was just checking whether my machine is warm, because it's making more warmth than what it usually makes. I think I need to get one of those little blowing things and blow out the dog hair out of my computer, but and dust from all of the charcoal that I have up here. Burning charcoal. It's like my hard drive, my machine's getting full of dog hair and charcoal. Unavoidable. We've got 3 dogs in here, and I'm burning charcoal all the time. But yeah, so I think it's up to us to take responsibility. And like you say, there's a lot there. They're getting it back into the occult arena. I want us to like really keep track of numbers, keep track of what numbers mean. Something you said, Indy, earlier, like they have started confiscating numbers from us. Most people think numbers represent something other than what numbers mean, right? And this has got to do with new woke writers in the last like 50 years that have been slowly reshaping our ideas. And we've got these ideas of different kinds of numerology. There are different ways in which numerology can be used, but the number 1 means the same thing in the Western world as what it means in India, what it meant in Chaldea, and what it meant in Persia, right? The number 1 has the same meaning. The same. And the number 1 even has the same meaning in China, if you can see it, if you don't get obfuscated. And this is actually one of the reasons why I have made a point of bringing out this enneagram, right? So that people can see this. This isn't mine. I'm not responsible for this enneagram. I have just added these words on here. But these represent the actual numbers, like what they mean. Like one is about leadership. So I want to just actually point something out here, and I want to show you something here that's quite important to appreciate, right? And I'll try to be quick about this. So this is the number that this is the woke one. So this guy was 22 years old, right? The guy who invented this system was 22 years old. And when he was 22, he had a fully fledged system that he put together from what he says. This is Oscaria. What's his name? Not Oscaria. Ikazo. His name is Ikazo, right? Now, this Ikazo guy had basically made up this one. And he was 22 years old. Suddenly he was connected to the who's who of the media world in those days. We're talking about the 1960s, right? And he had then the 1950s going to the 60s. He had then had all these connections, and suddenly he was being interviewed at age 22. He got put into press publications. He was given prominent places to speak in universities to teach the system at age 22, which he had gotten from Chaldean books, which he had changed the meanings, changed the geometry, changed everything. And I want you to look at these numbers because this is really important to understanding like basic occult principles. The number 9, the peacemaker. This is what people are out there teaching you, that this is what the number 9 represents. But if you go, you can even Google what number 9 means. Did you know that? And you can even literally find here. Okay, so the number 9 is actually associated with activism. It represents humanitarianism, compassion, idealism, and is a deep desire to serve others and make the world a better place, right? So people that are connected to number 9 are people that are drawn to careers of cause with causes that involve social change. And so that's quite an important thing to consider when we consider just exactly what this means, right? So there we've got the number 9. Now, let's see what they say here. They say it's the peacemaker. Okay, that's very interesting. That doesn't add up, actually, right? What do they say here about number 3? Number 3, the achiever. Okay, so what does the number 3 represent? And I want to explain to you why I have the activist in number 9, because that fits with Vedic numerology, Western numerology. So number 3, I've got here as the optimist. It's just a word that I've chosen. But let's see what, they say. Number 3, they say number 3 represents the achiever. Actually, the achiever is number 8. So they've obfuscated that. There's certain ways in which you can see a relationship between 3 and 8. True. But what does 3 represent in terms of actual numerology? In other words, the Chaldean system that we are looking at here. So 3 represents, right, creativity, yeah, joy, optimism, inspiration, communication, like what you see in Sagittarius, right? Jupiter, right? It's highly inspiration. It's a vibrant energy that encourages self-expression through art and writing. Okay, so let's go and look back at the obfuscated version of the woke one that they've given us for a moment, and see where that goes. Why am I having this issue here? I can't seem to come back to my screen. This is becoming a little bit much. We'll close that down so we don't have that there, and then hope that we can get that back there. and hope that we can go to there and then back there. Huh. Can you guys see me on the screen? Have I closed down?
No, I still see the Enneagram picture.
You want me to try to do something?
Rather don't, because I just have to figure out why this is doing this. This is very strange. New window. Let's see what happens when I've got new windows open here. No, I don't need a new window open there. Did I open two windows?
It sounded like there's an extra.
There. That worked. Very strange. So anyway, that's really a bit annoying, if I'm going to be honest with you. So I think I need to look at this. But yeah, when we look at this situation, so yeah, we look at the Oscar, the Ikazo version, and we see the number 3, the achiever, right? But what do we see for number 3? We see the enthusiast. The description that I just read to you is very close to enthusiast. Inspiration, optimism, Jupiter. Enthusiasm is the field, it's the sphere of Jupiter. It's all about enthusiasm. It's enthusiastic energy. So they've put enthusiasm on number 7. Then what have they done? They've put an individualist on number 4. So what does individualist represent, if we want to look at it, like effectively, right? Anyway, I've lost the other one. So where do we go? So if you look at number 3, even if I put it in here, maybe I should just do it here. 3, you can see for yourself. I mean, this is fairly 3 numerology. No, sorry. Represents. Even the AI is not going to be able to lie about this, right? Yes, numerology links the number 3 with enthusiasm. Number 3 is often seen as representing creativity, optimism, joy, traits that manifest are enthusiastic and vibrant spirits. Okay, so there we found another obfuscation. Number 7. Let's see what they say about number 7. 7. It's changed that. 7 numerology represents, what do you call it when you're going into yourself? Individuation. Individuation. That's about internalizing, right? 7 numerology represents individuation, as is strongly associated with self-discovery, introspection, independence, and the search for truth. This is accurate. I confer. This is so. Even here, Oscar Ikazo's nonsense is shoveling at us. It's shoveling absolute tripe at us. So they've switched over 7 with the meaning of 3. No, 7 with they've put 4. They've put the individualist on 4 when it should be on 7. They've put the achiever on 3 when the achiever should be on 8. Okay, let's see what they say about 8 numerology. 8 numerology represents achieving, right? Achieving goals, right? So anybody that's using this Oscar in numerology, the number 8 strongly symbolizes ambition, power, financial success, and achieving significant goals. Individuals associated with number 8 are seen as determined, authoritative. So this is high power, motivated energy of number 8 that represents achieving your goals. So there we go. That sort of brings us back to this point. And if you really start to look at this, you'll see that they're all over the shop. Okay. Number 2, the helper. Now that's an interesting one, because 2 represents polarity. 2 represents potential. They're probably getting closer with that one than with the others. Number 1, the reformer. Hold on. Didn't we decide that number 9 was the reformer? Right? The 9 is all about, remember what we said about number 9? 9 is about activism, and it's about reformation, about a renaissance, changing the world for the better. So they've put the number of the reformer next to 1 when it should have actually been, if you were following the Chaldean system of numerology, which is where Oscar Icazo says he got it from. Well, if he got this from it, then why did he move all the words around? What's all this? And why did they change this geometry away from the original, which is what I've basically been showing you guys. So the reformer goes to number 9 if you're going according to proper numerology, which is where the enneagram comes from. And so you can basically go all the while through all of this. And the helper is actually closer to number 6, just by the way, just so you know. Let's just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So they've actually obfuscated that. 6 is more to do with represents helping and service. You'll see. It's very much a 6 notion. Yes, numerology 6 is strongly associated with helping, service, and the responsibility, representing qualities like love, harmony, and nurturing, and care for others. So there's another one of the obfuscations created by this false enneagram system, right? The investigator. That's probably the one that's the closest. At least they kept one right. I suppose when you're mixing things up with a number 9, 9 numbers, one of them might stay, 1 or 2 might stay right. They put Challenger on number 8. Challenger is actually more like the number 9, because the Challenger and the Reformer are really the same thing, right? So they're playing with words, they're playing with obfuscation here. And when you start to do this, you're actually creating a false woke narrative. And that false woke narrative also cannot turn. It doesn't have the potential to circulate. And so there's no life in this. You need to be able to rotate this clockwise or anti-clockwise, and it needs to stay the same geometrically in order for it to be an agram, as they call it. So I think like that's just one example of how they have worked out the occult. If you are working out the numerology and the psychology behind the numerology, then the occult is based upon numbers, right? Whether you're studying Taoism, whether you're studying Kabbalah, whether you're studying Vedic occult practices, numbers are like fundamental to occultism. I don't know. What do you guys think? Like,
I'm going to be real with you, Franklin. I'm less interested in the numerical differences and more interested in the different terms that are being used, because the terms that you showed on the woke enneagram create a different narrative. Because with your enneagram, you have stuff like builder, artist, mystic, optimist, worker, activist. These are all very active individual roles. Whereas if you look at the other one, it's like basically enthusiast, loyalist, investigator, peacemaker. Those sound like roles in a cult, or like some kind of like like political ideology where you're just a lemming following that. You're just the blind enthusiast for the party. And think about the term peacemaker, right? The peacemaker in a lot of ways is also a term for a weapon, a gun. And so, and communism and woke is all about the ultimate goal is to create bloodshed, destroy the ruling class, destroy Western civilization out of blood, and erect, a new Marxist utopia out of that. And you see that in a lot of ways, it reflects that kind of thing. Because you think about that, there's the reformer, you're reforming society, you're creating achievements, you're sort of an individualist against society. But but if you notice with these roles, there's not as much of a sense of individuality or individual accomplishment with something like an adventurer or a builder. Those are things that are like, you do on your own. Whereas with this, because I'm thinking about it in terms of woke, and I'm realizing there's actually some connections here, that you realize that these changes in these words and these enneagrams create a different narrative about who we are and who reality. I don't think that you might be right that it's not an accident. I think that there's a kind of they're taking the enneagram and they're trying to use it to point towards a more secular political narrative as opposed to a more mystical one. So really, I'm less interested in the changes in the numerological process and more interested in how the different phrasings of the terms create a new narrative in regards to one's personality and the relationship to society in general.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I think they're connected, though. You wouldn't be able to put those terms on other numbers. Like, there's a reason why they have used those numbers, right? Because when you look at those numbers, right, when you put the reformer onto number 1, it puts reformation as the origin of things. I want you to understand the subtle numbers speak to our unconscious more than what they speak to our conscious. And when they put 2 as the helper, that the 2 is the potential that brings your. So 1 is the origin. That's your ego. That's your fundamental who you are. 2 is the potential and power of your ego. So here they are insinuating that the ego is just the reformer, and the helper, which is your true power and potential, is just for helping whatever system this represents. And that your inspiration is really just based upon achieving, which means when you put achiever with number 3, that means you're looking for credit outside of yourself. That means you're not looking for fulfillment within yourself. It means that your inspiration is based on your achievements. So it's all about work, vocation and work, and gaining what's the term? Validation. That you put the word achiever next to the number 3, what that number speaks, because it speaks a language, it tells you that this is about validation. When you put the individualist next to number 4 represents the end of life in China for a reason. Number 4 represents the builder for a reason, because it represents crystallization. Crystallization represents being fixed. Being fixed represents stagnancy. So when the individualist, when who you base your sense of self upon that, 4 also represents dogmatism. I want you to grasp how powerful putting that word next to the number 4 is. So unconsciously, I'm talking to you about negative quality of dogmatic, and I'm putting individualist next to that, which suggests that becoming dogmatic is who you are. It's a spell. The only one that's correct is number 5. And even investigator is like, it's more, but like you say, investigator is like, what do you investigate? Well, investigators investigate crimes. Why not researcher? Why not a different term? But I agree with you very much, Cosmic, that the terms themselves, when I came across this Enneagram when did I discover this Enneagram? I think it must have been like about 92, 93. I saw this picture, and it actually gave me like heebie-jeebies. I was like, put that aside. I didn't even want to look at it. Years later, I saw this thing's becoming more and more popular. And then I saw books about it, and I thought, my gosh, they're using this system. It looks wrong. And in the last 10 years, it's become even much more popular. And I've noticed a lot of people are using it. And I think like Dominator X, you point out, so they are limiting people's personalities through numbers, the same way astrology limits personalities by assigning them to a zodiac sign. It's not quite that simple, right? The numbers are not what's limiting the personalities. The number is a language, right? So numbers are language. Each number has a meaning. And the numbers are related to planets, planetary influences. And astrology doesn't sort of limit you to a personality based upon a zodiac sign. No, astrology is actually a language that explains that where the sun is when you're born, where the moon is when you're born, where Mercury is when you're born, where the Mars is, where Saturn, where Jupiter, where all the planets are, where you're born matters. And those are in correlation to where your first house is when you're born. And based upon where your first house is, where you're born, maps all of these planets into a particular pattern. And whichever particular houses all those planets are in shapes a different aspect of your potential and powers and personalities, weaknesses and strengths as a human. And then when you take into consideration the relationships between different planetary associations in relation to your first house, you start to get trines and squares and sextiles. And so these are giving you inclinations of subtlety of how those planets are being affected by the other planets. So it's an incredibly complex language, astrology, that's explaining to you like a lot about you. It's not just a one word. It's like a 10,000 word. It's like a whole book, a memoir, more than a word, more than one thing. So astrology is, there's nothing simple, but you're right. They worked out astrology. The woke idea of astrology is I'm a Leo. That's woke astrology. Unwoke astrology is, well, I'm a Leo, but my Leo is in my midheaven. That's so many degrees within Leo related to my ascendant, my Sagittarian, how many degrees that is, which is related to where my Jupiter sits. That my Jupiter is the first planet leading the march through the night, which is the night and the day. And then all the other planets, you know, where's my moon? How does that moon relate to me? Taurus. But what does that say about me? Well, where's my Mars? How's my Mars related to my moon? Where is that conjunction? What degrees are the conjunction in? And then all the other planets. So it becomes quite a complex map that you start to draw. And that map of complexity, you can scale it down to the minerals in your bones, right? If you know how to do the maths. Because these different planetary energies relate to different minerals. And so you'll have a different matrix in your physical body with different gifts and strengths and weaknesses. But you're totally right, you know, that like the numbers and astrology are fundamentally connected. But what they are doing is they're changing the meanings of the numbers. So it's like me taking the word yellow and putting the word red there. So when you talk about the yellow color, you're going to use the word red, and then changing other words with things, and then creating this total confusing language that's very difficult to communicate with. And this is really what they're doing with the numbers. And I think like numbers is just one of the places where we see this happening. It's happening across the board. It's happening with the AI systems that's now thinking for us. So we're actually giving up our ability to think for ourselves. Yeah, crimson, man. I love the color crimson.
It's funny that you mentioned this whole idea of like kind of taking the Enneagram, taking it around and confusing. Because if you read a lot of like, you know, the people that started like woke texts, like, you know, your post-structuralist French philosophers, they would use intentionally confusing language that's really kind of all over the place. It's sort of like to kind of scramble up your mind, because the thing about woke is it's all about destruction. Ultimately, it's about I mean, if you really want to understand what woke really is, it's about basically destruction of Western civilization, but not just in a literal way with, you know, weapons and fire stuff, but also conceptually taking basically our ideas, putting them into a blender, confusing, twisting, disintegrating, melting, putting them in all until it's unrecognizable. And the whole reason you do that is to basically kind of disempower people, because when you can't trust what's around you and when everything is confusing and, you know, it destabilizes you essentially. And then it makes you an easier agent for control by the powers that be. So if anything, I could see this Enneagram as a kind of like a Marxist revolutionary play to kind of get into people's heads and try to infect the occult, so that that can take occultists and sort of channel them towards their ideological structure by basically taking what the occult, twisting it so that it actually is compatible with their narrative. Because that's kind of how it works. Is it basically, like I said, there's two, when it comes to any kind of oppressive ideology or religion, there's two strategies that they ultimately employ. It's either they destroy their competition, or they absorb the competition and make it part of their own, essentially kind of devouring it, digesting it, and making it a part of itself. And that's essentially what woke is really doing with a lot of stuff like the occult and just culture in general. It's just basically consuming it and making it part of itself by kind of like twisting it. And because the way I look at it, if you look at sort of transcendentalism and seeing the world as ultimately based on order, this woke ideology sees everything as basically chaotic. Nothing has meaning. Everything is relative. You know, it's all about power. It's very dark and sinister. But the thing is, on the surface, it seems very benign and friendly, you know, and loving. I mean, looking at this enneagram, like if you didn't have any kind of like knowledge about the occult or mysticism, you would see that and think, you know, this is totally harmless. But when you realize what it's an obfuscation from, you start to realize like, wait a minute, there's something else going on here. So I could definitely see like some, you know, maybe this enneagram is some kind of like weird, you know, because that's what the thing that the woke was all about. Like if you look back and like, you know, the either the communists or the fascists, is that they would try to inject certain things into culture so that the, you know, the mainstream people would sort of follow along with that. They basically would rewrite the narratives and sort of you know, mess with the truth so that you know, people would go along with that and they would believe that it's real. But you know, because I think that's part of what the woke project is really about, is to create so much confusion and so much obfuscation that you no longer trust your own senses. You no longer trust your own intuition, making you dependent upon other people to guide you and tell you how to think and feel.
I think that's really well put, brother. And you said so much there. I love when you speak about the two different ways, either absorbing or destroying. Indy, brother, I can see your lips moving under your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but I know a lot of the images that have come from AI have been very misleading, and it's pretty frustrating. I think anybody that's been using AI to articulate their thoughts on a post in social media, using AI with an image of something that doesn't even closely resemble what they're speaking about, I've just decided to block them out and just like walk away from seeing this information, because it's, at first, you know, I started to show people what the actual image looks like, and that was very helpful for a lot of folks. But I could see where this is going to be a big problem for people that are just learning about something new. They're going to have misassociations with how something looks, and when they talk to somebody else about what they've learned, they're going to maybe try to argue in favor of what they had learned about being misinformed. And so it's going to create a lot of arguments and disagreements and unnecessary conflict, I think, with people's struggle to maintain associations with correct information and understand the truth and share the truth with one another, the meaningful information. It's kind of making things become nihilistic, like things really lose their meaning when they're misrepresented and misassociated, and then people really can't even figure out what the original meaningful, truthful actual information really was. And it's hard for them to discern between how it's been mangled up and put in a blender and where it came from and what it really started as. So I feel like there's a big issue with that, especially it's showing up for me in what I've seen with the images that show up, whether it's in these AI YouTube videos or just like little AI pictures that people make to share with a meme. But it's been pretty disruptful to me. I think it could really take away the power of information. I mean, we're in the golden age of information right now, and the ability to share pictures of information is worth 1,000 words. It shows a lot more than people even notice, and there's so much more you can find in an image than people even look for. But when they have like misinforming images like this, I get pretty irate about it. I really don't like the the flexibility AI seems to take on like showing what something kind of looks like kind of really bothers me, but I feel like it's part of the whole system is the plan to kind of like bifurcate people and compartmentalize different waves of information. People are on different levels. And I think that it's pretty easy to kind of separate people from being able to think together by doing stuff like this. I was recently told that the women's liberation movement was done for 2 reasons: to tax the other half of the population and to indoctrinate all of the children instead of having them be homeschooled by an at-home parent. So I think they've pretty much achieved this, and it seems like they right now, like we're in the end game of their agendas to really get people into a place where they can control their minds and they can start to take away their creative aspect, put them into a place where they're just becoming just drones. And what kind of drones, I don't really know. It seems like to me like there's a lot of favoritism in people that are genderly disabled or whatever they're being right now. In the workplace, they seem to be able to take over entire workplaces and facilities, and they're being favored. And when there's conflict, they seem to win because they're politically correct with these human rights conflict issues that they've been having, where I feel like, it's been a hard time for those folks because there was a lot of aggression against them and violence against them for a long time. And so it kind of almost makes sense that they had like a time of their time where they're being liberated and stuff and not being seen as a lesser than. But I really don't feel like they've gone about it in a good way, and it's created like a back wave of alter conflict where it's just another version of the same thing that used to be. And so like good people are being put into bad places because they're not online with the new politically correct ways, and it's just kind of getting to be a bit hard to deal with the ways that they're pushing the collective to be able to be in a place of sensible mind, body, and soul. They want to pervert us into these weird, half robotic or altered gender or some kind of like dissociative thing where they're trying to get people onto the scale of, are you on the Asperger's and autism scale? And then if you are, they're going to try to administer some like necessary like restrictions of those people or something, apparently, potentially. So they're trying to do all these ridiculous things, and it's all connected to the AI, which has kind of just become, to me, the end result of the struggling from the workings of John Dee and Edward Kelly to try to make dealings with these angels to get the silicon to be able to use information storage to gain power over the collective and enslave them. And so I feel like we all have really become very seduced by it all, because it's very kind of entertaining to just sit back and let things all happen as they do in the ways that they've made it seem to be like a way where we can just sit back and relax. But they kind of make it so that we're poisoning our food weapon system. We get back from overworking ourselves and we're too tired to do other things that we're passionate about in our own lives. And so we sit down and we get indoctrinated by the screen of these devices, and we get stuck and hypnotized by that hypnotist in the living room into feeling a certain way or thinking certain ways. And it takes away our opportunity to be able to do certain things, like be able to take action, go out and start preserving your foods that you grew, or grow some foods, or make some art, or turn something into art that had broken. Fun things that people used to do when they were bored gave them more abilities to take things into their own hands and create something and do things with their life and move things and make things happen. Whereas sitting around and becoming a consumer and observing all this information is great, and it can be helpful for people that are really striving to learn and understand. But being able to take steps towards using that understanding is also very important, especially in our day and age where we've kind of been stuck on the couch, stuck in this void of misinformation that's been pushed on us. And it's good to start to question these things and to start to take on new perspective. But I think it's even better to balance it all out and try to get back into a little bit into nature, get back a little bit into community, and don't let this stuff isolate you, because I know it's isolated me a lot.
That was very well said, brother. And I think it comes from the heart, and it speaks to the heart, through the heart, about the heart. Beautifully, as always, and poetically expressed. And while you were talking about that, you're talking about the spectrum.
Yeah.
This is a big thing, man.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, it's very cool to be on the spectrum, right?
Right. Trying to drop.
It's really cool. It's like it's oh, you're on the spectrum. That's so cool. And there's so much. Do you remember how cool it was to get a sex change a little while ago?
Yeah.
The money was provided. Funding was there, right?
Yep.
The drugs were on tap.
God.
What was one of the first things that Musk and Trump started doing? Pulling that funding.
Good.
From the budget. So what about all those people that had sex changes?
That's not the right time to do it. They should have finished that out better.
So, like, where are they going to get their drugs from now when the money runs out to give them free drugs?
It's almost like they were in on it all to work it out like they did.
Like, so I know a cashier at the local supermarket in Fishhook who had a change, and I spoke to her frequently. A number of times, because whenever I've been there, I stop, and the first time I was talking to her about like this, and like she was like, "Yeah, I've had a sex change," because I had a feeling she had, wasn't sure. Anyway, spoke openly. We had a conversation about it, an open conversation, and like me, I'm like, I respect people's choices, I respect people's freedom to do what they want in their body. Who the hell am I to tell them what to do? And what she said to me was that the money her operation was paid for, right? There are these grants, and that her medication comes for free. And I said to her, well, what would happen if your medication's not free? Now, I wonder how long it's going to be until she has to pay for her medication. And she's a cashier in a supermarket. She's not going to be able to afford that. The hormonal treatment, or if she does, it's going to take like most of her salary, or a big chunk of her salary. Like, how is she going to live properly? She'll have to like get a room in her house and share it with a whole lot of people, and maybe like just to get by. The way I see it is like, I think like you say, I've often said as much and thought that all of this getting people labeled as being this and that is so that at a later stage they can treat them differently, right? At the moment they're being celebrated, and they're like, the facility is there, the same as like, get a sex change, like, we'll look after you, we'll pay for the operation, we'll give you the free drugs. And then like later stage, it's like, actually no, we don't have the money anymore, sorry, but that way you can buy the drugs from them. How much is the drugs? Oh, they're not cheap. We're talking hormonal replacement. That stuff's expensive to make. And considering that like 90% of what you pay has got to be the profit for that corporation that made it, it's going to be expensive. So this is what happens, love is the drug, Neil. If only everybody was addicted to the right drug, love. Got to be careful what you say. Drugs are bad. Don't use drugs, which is true, especially not pharmaceuticals. Especially not pharmaceuticals. Don't use them unless you have to. And if you have to, then use them with care and be careful. But yeah, I think,
True.
Well, our tuition, you say that sex change surgery and hormone therapy is a luxury. The thing is that the people that have had this surgery are not rich people. They didn't think this through. It's people that are working on the minimum wage. They can barely support, they're able to support themselves. Okay, just about, right? but they don't have the money for all of these therapies. Like they were targeted. They were the victims. The educated people were not the ones who were victim to this. It's the people on the lower bread market. You know, like I say, the lady I'm talking about specifically, she's a cashier in a shop. They don't earn a lot of money. Like they maybe just over the minimum wage. That's about it. And you know, with the cost of living going up, it's sad, you know. And not that, like, you know, she realized this. And I asked her these questions, and I saw her eyes get big, because I said to her, what would happen if the money for the drug stopped? And she'd never really thought about it. She'd never considered it, but it's too late now. She's done the operation. And if those drugs stop, effectively their life stops, right? Because the depression and the psychological backlash of not being on those hormonal treatment drugs would be such a life-threatening psychological breakdown that they wouldn't be psychologically safe. They would end up being institutionalized at best, right? Probably. Because, like, you know, the hormonal systems govern your emotions. So if you don't have the right hormones in your system, you got a problem. So they've removed their body's natural ability to generate and regulate their hormones. So they now need to keep putting it into their systems or else. And I think that, here's the thing. I think that will be an implant. What do you guys think? I reckon that very soon they're going to make an implant, like a little chip that generates the stuff in your body, right? Like a cybernetic implant. So you don't need to take the pills anymore. It's okay, well, you can't afford the pills, but what we will give you is a free implant, a cybernetic jack. Chink. There you go. Now your body is cybernetically able to manufacture what it needs out of your other hormones. Put in a cybernetic implant that takes this hormone and that hormone and combines them to make a different hormone that you can use for what you need. Think about it. It's possible. They've got neuro implants. I'm pretty sure they must be able to do that. So, you know, that I think is going to be how they're going to get people to go like full, you know, full cyberpunk. Cyberpunk 2077. Hello, Kind Davies. How are you doing? Namaste to all you guys. Our tuition. I hope you guys are thriving, man. Yeah, it's very scary, man. This stuff fills my heart with no joy. And I think it starts with the obfuscation of number first. Then it's the obfuscation of language. Then it's all these other layers. And AI is right up there with the obfuscation of knowledge and facts and information. And here's an interesting thing, epigenetics. So how's the epigenetics going to work with this, right? If you've got brains and you don't use them, what happens to your brains? They go entropy. They basically wither away, right? So with AI, people aren't really thinking for themselves. They're not researching. They're not discovering information for themselves. They're just relying upon an AI to do all of their research for them. That part of us that used to be like active in the process of researching and learning is going to become entropied. And so our brain mass will decrease the more we rely on AI. It's something that I'm scared of. It's one of the reasons why I try not to use AI more than the absolute minimum. You know, Google is like the absolute minimum as far as I'm concerned. These days, you need Google. Like the way the world is structured, like you want to buy something, Google. You want to know what to pay for something, this is how you find out what's available. But even this is being like overpowered by these AI systems. And so, you know, there is no avoiding the use of AI, but how extensively do you use it? It's sort of like you can't avoid eating salt, right? But do you pour like a triple dose of salt onto everything that you eat? And at which point does it become unhealthy, you know, like extremely unhealthy? Anyway, it's been fun. Are there any last ideas, last things that you think that we need to put on the table, dear Indy?
I don't know. It's such an expansive discussion. We could go into a lot of different stuff, but I think we covered a lot of the things I was trying to get down to. Yeah, I was just gonna mention that in ancient paganism, it's thought that there was no ill will towards others, and so this modern obfuscation of these cults, of pagan cults, is very different from the practices of the ancient mystics and the peoples of the pagan ways, in which they would have reverence for nature and one another and the animals of nature as well. So I like to just acknowledge that the human sacrifice and torture is just something that's a new obfuscation in the occult practices, but it was done for a long time in ancient times, but I feel like it was possibly under a different climate, a different emotional meaning.
There's a good question on the table. What do you think? How would you answer this question, dear Indy?
What's the question here? Why are we here? Yeah, I think we're here
Easy one.
to find balance. You know, I think we're out of balance and we're here to find more balance right now at this point where we're at. We have great potential to balance things out because we have a strong influence on things around us. But in the same way, we can cause great imbalance. I feel like we're really trying to find our niche, and we've been struggling to find that for hundreds of thousands of years, potentially, as a species. But we're really not there yet. We're trying to still create this synthetic alter world that's separate from nature. But I think eventually we're going to learn to come back to Mother Nature. But I think until then, we need to get better balanced with our synthetic world and the world around us.
Yeah, I find that a very difficult question to nail down with a single answer as well. I mean, I think balance is the key to moving forward towards success. And the why are we here? Well, I mean, to me, if I think about it, like, okay, I don't want to get into how we got here, right? Because when I drowned when I was little, and I was 3 years old, so I had no ideas about religion or anything. I remembered as soon as I got out of the matrix and I was like going into the other side and remembering like where I come from, I was like, holy crap. I remember this very weird thought. How did they get me to go in there? How did they trick me? I was actually a little bit angry with myself for being tricked into being tricked into this place. So firstly, so that memory has stuck with me for the last, a bit less than 5 decades. And so why are we here? I think we are here to recognize that we are all part of one tribal family, that we are all part of one entity, that we are cells of tissue, that we are one great being, and that this one great being is operating through all of us. And the realization that we are all one being can free us from this prison mindset that we've trapped ourselves in, or allow ourselves to be trapped into. We're a big part of the reason we're trapped. Let's not pretend that's not the case. We need to take responsibility. But that would, I think, be my best shot at trying to define that, is to recognize that we're all one, to realize that being one represents being in an altered state And that altered state is obviously love. I mean, the recognition that we're all one, it's that profound force. So to me, that seems to be, the meaning behind all of this. But just as to how we got here and why we're here, I don't have the answers. But I suppose that's like balance in a way, if you think about it, because it's the balance between the inner and the outer. If we think about it, right? Like there's you and there's me, and there's him and there's her, and there's us and there's them. What is the balance between you, me, us, him, them? Like it's somewhere in the middle between you and me and him and her and us and them. And in the middle between all of it, there's still the same thing, right? Like somewhere in there. Omnipresence, Vincent. You gotta love Vincent. He's like omnipresence. I suppose that's what omnipresence is, isn't it? Omnipresence is when we are like in every. And I love what you said about the animals, by the way. The way that okay, so if you've got a stray dog in Europe, I don't know if it's still like that. Maybe you people in Europe can tell me if that's still the case. But it was that way like 10 years ago. If you've got a stray dog in Europe and your dog leaves your home and gets lost, do you know that it's classified as livestock?
Really?
That's the law in Europe. Like, how hectic is that? Do you understand what rights livestock have? Let's think about what rights livestock have in Europe. You know what foie gras is?
Oh, boy.
They take a duck,
Wow.
they strap it into a machine that force feeds them
Oh,
until their organs burst. And then those popping, swollen organs are turned into a la carte condiment that's really sought after. And that creature suffers in excruciating. That is like the worst kind of torture that you could ever invent. That's what rights livestock have in Europe.
God.
And these little beings are part of us. By the way, Neil, it's not just about humans. I think it's about animals too. Like right down to the little things, the little tiny little microbes, and the ants, and the big things, the planet. I mean, the planet's a living being, and not just the planet. Like everything else is also a living being. So we're part of something so much bigger, and we're locked into these little 3D little engines, stuck in these little, like, this is who I am, this is what I've got, you're separate to me, like money, running through our lives like this, right? And when there's these bigger issues running, like, for example, Bitcoin. Everybody thinks Bitcoin's going to save the world. Yeah? Bitcoin uses more electricity than every single public space in the world's being lit up. We're talking about every single road, or every street light in the world, and all city, town, and village lighting for public areas. All of that lighting. When you're in space at night and you can see all the lights, right? All of that energy. Well, if you're in space, I don't know if you can see the lights from space, but if you're in a high altitude and you can see the lights, all of that energy is basically, Bitcoin uses more energy than that, right? That's how much electricity we waste with Bitcoin. And now we've got supercomputers, AI, that will be wasting even more energy than that. And just to realize that Imagine all that energy that we waste with AI and Bitcoin. Imagine we turn that energy into indoor farms. Do you know how much food we could be growing for hungry people, that there would be no hunger in the world? So the more energy we waste, the more hunger there will be in the world, the more suffering. So this is why we got to choose. Yeah. Bitcoin might be an easy way to make a few bucks, but what does that mean for your grandchildren? Right? Where does that take you? Like, where's your heart in all of this? We got to step out of this paradigm that they've created for us. Everybody keeps talking about how, oh, you got to protect yourself and you got to protect your finances. You got to diversify your financial footprint and Bitcoin and this and that. I get it. But what's more important than that? And so, yeah, it's about the people we meet along the way. I think that's the last thing I can say. What are your last famous words here, dear Indy?
I think that was well said. Everything you just said, I agree concordingly. And I think it's been a great discussion today. I feel like we all could use a little bit more gratitude in our lives. And if that's where you're at, blessed be. And thank you, everybody in the chat, all the viewers today, everybody that came in to join the round table. And special thanks to Franklin.
Special thanks to you and to Cosmic and to Zerilat and to General Shinobi and to all of you guys in the chat. You guys have been bringing lots of beautiful information, ideas, blessings, and big love to all of you. Keep the smile alive. Keep the dream alive. Let's go back to our roots. Let's leave AI and Bitcoin behind and get back down to the organic life, because we're organic and there ain't nothing wrong with being organic, man. In fact, we should eat organic.
Yeah.
Big love to all of you. Blessed be. Om Shanti. It's been great. Thank you, guys.
Blessed be.
Blessed be. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Namo Shivaya. Har Har Mahadeva. Jai Gurudeva Lakabam Shankar.